Hey guys, what's up? Rover here. Welcome to another how to build guide. This time we will be looking at Falconer Kluri. She is an earth type knight unit that provides one of the best lockdown skills in the game. Even though she is a knight class, this is not really the case for her. I mean, in terms of role, she is actually a support first and a tank second. She's a solid defense breaker while providing a regen for the entire team. She's also one of the earliest units that went through specialty change, and if you plan to use her, you have to get her specialty version as fast as possible. I mean, she's still good to use for her defense break without the specialty, but you will get so much more when she has access to her skill tree. Before we talk about that, let's have a look at her skills first. Kluri's first skill, Light Step, increases her combat readiness by 15%. Damage scales proportional to her defense. You can increase the CR boost to 20% at +3 skill enhance. The one thing that's important in this skill is her CR boost. This will push her turn faster and will be very important for her other skills when we talk about it next. Kluri's second skill, Magic Resist, is basically a regen. Recovers 5% of health at the start of her turn. This is a skill that affects all members in your team, so each ally will heal 5% of their max HP. This can be increased through skill enhance up to 10%. It's pretty good to have. The more turns she has, the more effective this skill is. It does put less stress on your healer in case you want them to do something else aside from healing, or if the healing skill is in cooldown. Kluri's third skill, Fortitude, is her selling point. It's the skill that revolves around her character. It has a 75% chance to provoke and decrease defense for 2 turns. It's a pretty flexible skill. I mean, you can use it to lock someone down and force attention to her, or apply defense break for your DPS to do more damage. 75% is very high, and what's great about it is that you can increase this to 100% through skill enhance at +3. And it's cheap! You don't even need a Molagora Go. To get it to +3, you only need 5 Molagoras in total. I'm pretty sure you can spare that much for this skill. It is at a very long cooldown at 6 turns, but can be reduced through skill enhance. This is the only skill that you should invest in. If you really see her as someone you will be using a lot, then you can invest in her other skills, S1 to +3 or S2 to +5. Most likely you wouldn't, and I wouldn't recommend it. In time you will get better units, and I'd rather save those for that instead. So yeah, don't do this, alright? I skill enhanced her before her nerf, so thank goodness I didn't finish it. When she goes through her specialty, this skill becomes Flurry Attack and gets an extra effect on top of the previous effects. She also gets a 75% chance to dispel all buffs from the target. This is really good. In a few PvE contents this can be helpful, but in PvP it's damn good. Just adding this means it can break through immunity, because this skill will strip that off first, and then apply provoke and defense break. Angelica isn't going to save you, C. Armin isn't going to save you either. Once this is set on a target, they're pretty much screwed, unless you have a Destina or other cleanse units. Then that's a different story. Keep in mind that the skill enhance only affects both defense break and provoke, and not the dispel chance. But don't worry, she does have a rune in her skill tree that can increase this. Talking about skill tree, F Kluri, as I mentioned earlier, can go through specialty. I would definitely try to get this version, even if you are using her strictly in PvE contents. This is because some of her runes give her extra speed, and some support utilities that helps the entire team. 2 of her specialty quests will take a while to complete. Eliminating wild plants is the easiest one. The best stage for this is for S2. Now all of the monsters in this stage are all wild plants, and this will give you quite a lot per run. Her second quest, leveling up Mega Phantasmas to 40, will take a while, but you can cut down the time by planning ahead. If you are getting her specialty version in the near future, or if she's not level 50 yet, I would level up any Mega Phantasmas you have at the moment and get them to level 39. When you unlock this quest, then it becomes easier for you to complete it. For her last one, it's going to take a long time, but you can just do it in the sideline as part of your daily quests. Looking through her skill tree, the ones on the top row all increases her stats, first one increasing her defense. I would leave this to the very last if you still want to invest in her tree. I mean, it's nice to have extra protection as well as damage on S1, but most of the time she will be an off-tank support, and by the time you want to rank this up, it may not seem worth it with the amount of the resources you have to pay. These two here all give speed. One of them gives 4 speed while the other gives 5, so that's 9 extra speed in total. Definitely get these when you can. You will need every ounce of this stat to make sure she's in the front. On the second row, this rune increases the damage of her S1, basically increases her skill multiplier. Don't max this. Invest only 1 point so you have access to the next rune. The reason being is that she doesn't need damage, it's not her job, and it's better to put your resources that would actually benefit her S3 or her entire team. Next one, speed rune, definitely max this one. Boosts CR on her S1 and will really help in reducing S3 cooldown and more pop on her regen. After that is Mercy rune, also definitely max this one. If you build her with a lot of speed, you will be triggering this effect a lot more, and if it triggers on the right ally, it will make your runs easier. The first 2 runes on the last row are completely up to you. Wealth rune gives her a shield instead when she uses her S2 while at full health. What this does is it makes her regen useful even at full health. Keep in mind that this only affects her. Life rune increases the recovery rate of her S2 by an additional 2%, so that's 7% regen at 0 skill enhance and 12% regen at max. The next one, language rune, is the most important out of all the runes in this tree, and should be the rune you want to get first. This increases the dispel chance by 25%. All in all, her S3 is perfect, 100% chance on defense break, provoke, and then dispel. What more can you ask for? Her last rune is more of a clutch. At the end of her turn, there's a 10% chance to increase her combat readiness to 50%. A nice turn boost and will definitely help with her S3's cooldown. This one is really up to you, but if you are planning to max this rune, get the important ones first and then come back and max this one. For gears, there's only 2 ways you can build her, but the set should ultimately be the same, just different substats. Knowing that she is a knight unit, her job is more of a support than tanking for the team. It's best to gear her with speed and either health, hit, or unity set. Before Kluri's nerf, speed and health or hit set were the best build. After her S3's cooldown being increased by 1, she could no longer perma-lock a unit in PvP. With that said, she is still pretty good to use. The gem in Kluri is her S3 and S3 only. So you need to find ways to reduce her cooldown as much as possible, either through speed or dual attacks. Now why dual attack? Well, her S1 gives her a CR boost every time she uses this skill by 15%, 20% at max. Now choosing between health or hit set will depend on the substats of her gear. For PvE content, she needs at least 50 to 60% effectiveness, while in PvP she needs 80% or more effectiveness to make sure she lands those debuffs. It is very risky to use her with low effectiveness because all she is her S3. If you miss her debuffs, especially the defense break, you either have to start again, lose, or will have to turtle the battle until it is up again. For necklace, give her HP percentage or defense percentage as a main stat, effectiveness or HP percentage on ring, and always speed on boots. When choosing gears, it's a must to have speed stat on all her gears, especially when you plan to bring her to a PvP environment. If you have a gear regardless of the set that has a high speed substat, give it to her. That's okay to use as long as it doesn't break the full gear speed set, leaving you 2 slots to choose whatever gear that has the highest speed. For the other substats, you can have a combination of HP percentage, defense percentage, effectiveness, or effect resist. Now my Kluri's gears aren't perfect. She used to, but had to move gears around and she ended up with this. Her necklace is especially bad, but this is just temporary. I just needed to finish the set, but at the moment I'm only using her for Banshee and she has no problem with this. As of now, she'll be stuck with this for a while until I find more uses for her. In your case, if you want to use her in different areas, it might be better to build her properly. For artifacts, Elbrus can be used, but not the best. This artifact on Kluri is more like throwing dices. When it triggers, 2 things will happen. First, she will counter, triggering a CR boost for herself. Second, if you have Mercy Rune maxed, she will also increase the CR of a random ally by 10%. Pretty good, but the trigger chance is another different story. For 4-star artifacts, Aureus is probably the best one for Kluri, increasing defense of all allies by 10% while taking 20% of the damage that your allies get for herself. This works for her because the damage that she would take will be mitigated by her S2 regen, basically cancelling each other out. The other one that you can use is Hila Glance. If her gears still don't help her close the gap on her S3 downtime, then this artifact will help close that gap. However, AoE attacks will not trigger this, so in some situations this might be a bad idea. For 3-star artifacts, Ranen's Memorandum will be the one to use when doing any long PvE content such as Asmakalis, Labyrinth, they're all good. The goal here is to try to replicate what Kluri used to be before the nerf. It's never going to be perfect, but the closer it is to that, the better it is for her. Now with this artifact, as the fight goes on, she will gain more speed and her turns will be faster. Usually you have to go through a few battles before you reach the boss, so most of the time when you do get to the boss, the stack should be maxed. At this point, her defense break uptime should be a bit higher. Another one you can use is Prophetic Candlestick. You can use this if Kluri is in the front line. If this triggers, her S3 cooldown will be decreased by 1. Kluri is a good support tank unit to use both in PvE and PvP contents. The only reason why people use her is her high defense break chance, and when used in PvP, mostly her Provoke and Dispel to slow down or lock down an enemy. Before her nerf, she was ridiculously good in offensive teams. Her S3 was shorter, and if you build her with enough speed, she was able to perma-lock down a single target. There was no SC Montmorency, and Destino was too slow to stop Kluri. Nothing could stop her, unless you lock her down first, but due to her high speed, it was a challenge for many players. Now she's not what it used to be, probably never will, but to new players who don't have much unit to choose from, she will definitely be your main solid defense breaker. Her S3 just has so many uses. In PvE contents, of course, you want her for the sole purpose of a guaranteed defense break, but in a PvP setting, you have 2 goals to use her S3. Is C. Armin about to use her S3? Provoke her. Did C. Armin just use her S3? Strip those buffs on a priority target. Is Dizzy about to use her S3? Provoke. Your DPS is going next? Defense break. Angelica? Strip. Dien? Strip. Charles? Don't strip. Don't do it. I don't want to see it. Moving on. In a way, this level of flexibility in her S3 is what makes her fun to use, in my opinion. However, her biggest flaw is the fact that only her S3 is useful. S1 is more like a support skill for her S3, and S2 is not that great if you don't skill enhance it, and skill enhancing it to max is a waste of Molagoras. So yeah. Also, you probably noticed that you don't see her much in defense with the current meta, and this is because a big majority of players have Montmorency and she's good enough to counter Kluri's S3. Cleanse just kills her, and the fact that her sole purpose is to lock down a target, this just puts the nails in the coffin. In my experience that I've used her after the nerf, I found her most useful in Banshee hunts with Baiken. Basically I'm going for a 2-turn nuke, mostly relying on Baiken's raw damage. Kluri is really important here because of her high defense break chance. One of the biggest flaws in this team composition is that if defense break doesn't land, there's just no way of clearing it. Baiken won't be able to kill the Banshee, Banshee splits, and all hell breaks loose. Even if I'm lucky and survive, the run is going to take 3 times longer. At this point, it's better to just restart. If your strategy for Banshee is to cheese each split phases, then she can still be used until maybe stage 10, since her S2 regen with the Arias artifact can give your whole team some form of sustain. Since it takes a few turns, most likely 2 turns, to get rid of the Banshees, by the time the Queen comes back, her S3 should be up. Can't say for certain, I don't do that, I just nuke it. And that's all for me today. F Kluri is still viable even after the nerf. The only reason why players ditched her is because she couldn't perma lockdown anymore, and her S3 now seems like a stretch. If you are using her in a PvE content, you don't really need to do that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Cheers, Rover out.